Hi people, welcome to the Run Testers and our head-to-head of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 versus the Endorphin Speed 3. Now the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3 set the benchmark for plated speedy daily trainers and it's a pretty hard act to follow. But the next gen upgrade, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, is here to attempt exactly that. Saucony has gone for minor updates here with tweaked uppers, a re-engineered nylon plate but the same medium stack of PWRRUN PB foam in the midsole. So considering you can find good deals on the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3 right now, the big question is whether it's worth paying the full price for this new upgrade. So let's get into our Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 versus Saucony Endorphin Speed 3 review. Details then, when it comes to stack height, there's no change here. The Speed 3 and the Speed 4 pack the same 36mm in the heel and 28mm in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. On weight, the Speed 4 weighs in marginally heavier than its predecessor at 8.6 ounces or 245 grams in a US 9.5, UK 8.5 test shoe size. The Endorphin Speed 3 tipped the scales at 8.4 ounces or 237 grams. Price-wise, there's no change here to these shoes in the US. Both shoes launched at $170, but in the UK, the price of the Speed 4 has jumped up from £165 to £180. That's at the top end of what you can expect to pay for a daily trainer. However, you can find cheaper deals online for the Speed 3. For example, it's currently listed at $135 on the Saucony site. Let's give you a quick shoe whip round then, starting with the midsole. Now the Speed 4 midsole remains largely the same. You've still got the medium stack of PWRRUN PB Pebax foam. That's working in tandem with a winged nylon plate and Saucony's trademark speed roll rockered shaping. The nylon plate has been tweaked with an altered shape that Saucony says should add stability, rigidity and forefoot flexibility. It also sits slightly lower in the midsole, so there's more foam directly under the foot. Now the midsole heel kickback extends slightly further on the Speed 4 and there's a little more foam on the medial side of the heel too. So if you land further back, you might notice that giving added support and protection. Plus there are some aesthetic changes with some geometric cuts and small cutouts on the underside for a larger kind of central channel here on the Speed 4. Up top, the Speed 4 now has zonal mesh uppers with a light and airy perforated design. That's thicker than the mesh uppers that you had on the Speed 3, but both shoes though offer plenty of room and flex in the toe box from those uppers. There's slightly more padding in the heel collars of the Speed 4, but you're going to get medium padding on both shoes. The tongues of the Speed 4 are also more padded at the top here, but they're now knitted and much more flimsy, pliable if we're being kind, than the Speed 3, which had more structure to it and wrapped all the way down the foot into the shoe. Now if you flip them both over, the outsole grip has been overhauled here. The Speed 3 had quite a sparse kind of rubber covering in the main impact zones. That had a tendency, you can see here, to sort of scuff up when there was no protection in high wear areas. The Speed 4 now has much more generous and thicker covering of rubber, with large sections covering the whole foot and some more in some of the troublesome heel areas.
Comes to fit of the two shoes, I've got a UK 9, US 10 in both versions of the Endorphin Speed, and I think on length they are both bang on for me. They do fit me well. They've got a right amount of length and room in the toe box. Did have quite a lot of problems with the fit of the Endorphin Speed 3. We talked about it when we were reviewing it. It definitely has a wider fit to the previous models of the shoe, and I found it a bit too wide for me. You can see how tight I've had to pull the laces there, and I had a bit of a heel slippage as well with the right shoe in particular. I do think they've narrowed the fit very slightly with the Endorphin Speed 4. I think it still has quite a accommodating fit for wide feet, but I've not had so much troubles with it in terms of it moving around. I've not had to heel lock the Endorphin Speed 4. I think the heel design's a bit better and I haven't really noticed my foot swimming around in it quite as much. So yeah, overall I prefer the fit of the Endorphin Speed 4 slightly, as I do have a narrow foot, but I think they're both pretty accommodating in terms of width, and yeah, I would stick to your normal running shoe size.
So the fit for me in the Speed 3 and the Speed 4, I'm a size 8 in the UK. These are both size 8s. What I would say is I would stick to my size in both these shoes. I found them both to be very comfortable, but the big difference between them is that the upper in the Speed 3 is a little bit more roomy. So if you've got a narrow foot, you might notice that. It wasn't a problem for me. I've got very average width feet. But I did have to tie in the laces a little bit tighter than I would on the Speed 4. That's the biggest difference for me. I found them both to be very comfortable shoes and had no issues at all, so I'd stick to my size in both of them.
Now when it comes to fit, I ran in my regular Saucony size, a UK 8.5 in both of these shoes, and I'd say the Speed 4 is marginally more snug than the Speed 3 at the back of the toe box across the top of the midfoot, in that area just behind the big toe knuckle. Now the thicker uppers on the Speed 4 also I think feel slightly less flexible. It's not a problem, but the Speed 3 overall feels marginally more roomy because of that. Beyond that, the fit here is pretty much identical, and I'd recommend going true to size in these shoes. Now in testing, I've covered more than 1,200 miles in 2 or 3 pairs of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3. This was the shoe that I used to run 67 marathons in 67 days across Europe, so I have a pretty special relationship with this shoe. For the Speed 4, so far I've done more than 60 miles, but I really want to run more, and that's always a good sign. Now in both shoes, I've covered everything from slow and easy miles with 90 minutes or more time on feet, right up to all-out 5k pace interval marathon training sessions. And that's also taking in roads and light off-roads, which is always a good test for the durability and the stability. I also did a side-by-side mile with one shoe on each foot to really tease out the differences. Now the most notable difference when you run in both is that the extra foam in the heel, it puts a little more cushioning into the rear of the shoe for a subtle change to the ride and a mild sensation of there being more shoe on the foot in the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. It may also afford more protection for heel strikers. Now speaking of protection, the Speed 4 feels very marginally softer and less direct than the Speed 3. Runners who wanted a bit more cushioning deeper into long miles than the Speed 3 offered might find there's some minor improvements here too. But as a fan of more direct shoes, I don't find that extra cushioning detracts from the ride of the Speed 4 either. Now I was a huge fan of the Endorphin Speed 3. What I loved about them so much was that they felt balanced enough to run at almost any pace. They had a disappearing, snappy, lightweight cushioned ease to them, a happy balance of speed and protection and comfort. The Endorphin Speed 4, I would say, delivers the same, with the same instant comfort the moment you lace them up. And you're going to get that same lively, energetic ride that copes well, I think, at almost any pace. Like the Speed 3, the Speed 4 offers snappy, lightweight, cushioned ease with a midsole setup that responds the more you put into it, but also supports you if you have to rock back and run a bit slow and take things a little bit easier. When it comes to comfort on the foot, I'd say they're even, and if we're splitting hairs, there's perhaps a little more room in the Speed 3, but if you wanted things more dialed in, the Speed 4 offers that marginally kind of racier fit. When it comes to durability, apart from a bit of cutting up in the heels of the Speed 3, I had no issues with durability overall on this. The 2 shoes that I ran in across Europe both lasted, but the changes to the outsoles here on the Speed 4 look to have beefed up that staying power in the Speed 4. I also think that they offer better grip than the Speed 3 when things get wet. One change I'm less convinced about are the new knitted tongues on the Speed 4, which feel much more kind of flimsy and unstructured. I'm concerned they might not hold their shape longer into the kind of long miles in these shoes when you've been running in them for 200, 300, 400 miles. The Speed 3 was a bit more no-nonsense. Same goes for the lacing strut setup, actually. They've swapped in some of these little kind of stitch-style loop tabs here, lace eyelets, that feel less robust than these ones that you had on the Speed 3.
I've been a fan of the Endorphin Speed since the first generation. Love the first 2 versions. Still like the Endorphin Speed 3 a lot in terms of its ride feel. The way it got a bit wider didn't suit me so well with a narrow foot. I think with the Endorphin Speed 4, you're getting a lot of the very similar characteristics to the Endorphin Speed 3 here, and that's a good thing all round. I think the ride is terrific. I think it's very versatile. I think Saucony has maybe widened the shoe a little bit compared to the Endorphin Speed 3 in terms of the base, if not the fit. So you're getting a slightly larger landing zone around the heel, and it maybe feels a little bit softer there as a result. But overall, I found them very comparable in the way they roll through and snap through when doing faster runs, and I do find them very equally comfortable when it comes to easy runs as well. Like running in both shoes at the same time, I maybe noticed a little bit of extra softness at the back of the Endorphin Speed 4, but in general, I thought they were very similar all round, and they are fantastic shoes. They're very versatile shoes. They're the kind of shoes I love using in my rotation when I'm doing marathon training in particular, because a lot of daily training I will not just be flat out easy. I'll often pick up the pace slightly at the end of runs, lots of little mini progression runs, lots of steady runs at a decent pace for an hour, like quite long runs, and the Endorphin Speed 4 is basically the perfect shoe for that because it is comfortable, it's very relaxed at easy run pace. You can do even recovery runs in these shoes, and then when you do start to pick up the pace, you get a little bit of punch from the plate. It's quite a light and nimble shoe still, I find, and the foam in the midsole isn't the bounciest, but it certainly gives you enough pop to carry you through those hard training runs. And yeah, I found the performance very similar between the two, which is to say I really rate the performance of both of them, but on the run test the Endorphin Speed 4's fit has worked a little bit better for me, so probably slightly enjoyed that one a little bit more because I wasn't messing around with really tightening the laces or heel locking one of the shoes and that kind of thing. But overall, you're getting a very versatile shoe with these, whichever one you opt for. It's probably the most versatile shoe on the market. Great for easy stuff, good for faster stuff, can even look at racing in it, especially over longer distances, although you will get a step up in performance if you look at a full carbon racer. And yeah, I really enjoyed using both. The only other thing I think is a little thing in the Endorphin Speed 4's favour, I do think the grip is slightly improved with this lattice outside. I've been doing a lot of very wet running in the Endorphin Speed 4, 4, and I haven't really noticed any slippage, which the Endorphin Speed 3 occasionally, especially things like greasy tracks or pavements or just a little sheen of water on them, you get a little bit of slippage with the outsole. On the 3, slight improvement there on the Endorphin Speed 4, but I wouldn't say it's a game-changing update. It's still pretty minimal outsole.
So Speed 3 is a shoe that I used quite a lot for a lot of my training, especially during my last marathon in Berlin. And it's a fantastic shoe, really good all-rounder. Still very good at picking up the pace and doing faster reps in, very comfortable at doing easy-ish miles in, not the comfiest shoe for easy miles, but still could do them. It's still one of the best all-round daily trainers that you could get, up there with like the Hoka Mach 5. I've not tested the Mach 6 yet. Only thing I really noticed about this shoe was that it was quite roomy. Wasn't an issue for me, but I did feel like it was a little bit less stable in the upper than previous version of the shoe. Other than that, I always found it to be a solid, comfortable shoe that just continued the fantastic speed line. The Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, much of the same really. The major difference for me is that the upper is a little bit more restrictive, which will be a big bonus to a lot of people who didn't really like the slightly bigger upper on the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3. The other thing in it as well, it does have a redesigned upper that's meant to be, I think, a bit more breathable or something. I didn't really notice that at all. I think it's pretty much on a par with what we got from the Speed 3, absolutely fine. And I think the biggest difference is probably slightly redesigned plate in here. And I think I have noticed that on the run. Not massively. I still think these shoes are delivering pretty much exactly the same thing when I'm out on the run. I'm not really noticing any major differences. Apart from the fact that I think the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3 just feels a little bit softer and a little bit more natural when I run in it. Not massively. I'd pick either of these shoes, and I don't think I'd really notice have a major issue with wearing either of them for the sort of runs that I would pick these up for. But I did notice that. So I do think there's a little bit of a different feel from the design of the plate in here, but not massively. Other than that, it's a very similar shoe to the Speed 3. The performance feels of the shoe are almost identical to me, and I think it does exactly the same job, which is good because the Speed line has consistently made some of the best daily training shoes since it launched, and it shouldn't really change that much. There's a big risk to change this line. So little tweaks here and there I think are a good thing, and that's all that has really been done for me in this shoe. So I definitely, I think it's still a solid improvement on the shoe and very much enjoying it. The outsole has changed slightly because you have this new sort of lattice design on the outsole as opposed to this covering that's a little bit more vertical on the Speed 3. Both have been absolutely fine for me. I've never had any issues with grip on either of these shoes. I run on wet roads in Brighton quite a lot, and both have been absolutely fine. But the new lattice design is no issues at all. Feels perfect to me. Okay, my verdict on these two shoes. They are much of a muchness in many respects. I think they both deliver pretty much the same thing. I'd be happy to wear both of these shoes for any of the runs that I would use these for, which would be anything from daily miles. I don't really go for these shoes when it comes to proper easy miles. I want more cushioning, I want more softness. But most daily runs, both of these shoes are absolutely fine. I think they've got the same level of performance when you pick up the pace. I don't really think there's a massive difference in the performance benefits of these shoes. But for me, the only slight difference is the Speed 3 just feels a little bit more natural and maybe slightly softer because of that. And maybe that the redesigned plate has affected that in the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. But overall, I would say that because of the width of my feet, I think that's going to be an issue that for some people. So if you do have narrow feet, you're probably going to want to pick up the Speed 4 over the Speed 3. But I would say if that's not an issue, just go for the Speed 3 if you can get it considerably cheaper, because there's not any major differences for me in both of these shoes. More than happy to wear either of them for the runs that I would use them for.
Overall, I would say that the Endorphin Speed 3 and 4 are pretty comparable in terms of the performance they deliver underfoot. Saucony hasn't really done a massive update to the shoe with the change between these versions, which is probably a good thing because it's a very popular shoe, very accommodating shoe, suits a wide range of runners, works well for a wide range of paces, and the Endorphin Speed 4 does all of that, as well as the Endorphin Speed 3 with, I think, a slightly improved fit and a slightly improved grip from the outsole, but I don't think those improvements would add up to me necessarily buying the new shoe at full whack when you could find the Endorphin Speed 3 for a lot less in sales. So if that's your situation and you're seeing the Endorphin Speed 3 pop up in sales for a lot less than the new shoe, I would not hesitate to grab the older shoe for sure. I think they're very similar all round in terms of performance level, but if you're looking at them at the same price or you can't find the Endorphin Speed 3 anymore, I would say you can certainly go and grab the Endorphin Speed 4 knowing you're going to get more of the same in terms of the high level of performance and versatility that you expect from the Endorphin Speed line.
Verdict then, and I would say the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 is another great shoe. It's got everything the Speed 3 offered, but is it a better shoe? Well, maybe very marginally, depending on what your priorities are. There is a subtle extra softness to it. The fit is ever so slightly more compact and racy. The outsole durability and grip, I think, is a step on. Now, in my tests, I found the ride energy and the pace range of the Speed 4 a good match for the Speed 3. These are both among the best versatile do-it-all daily trainers you can buy right now, in my opinion. They'll both cope with easy right up to race pace for a really wide range of runners. The sub 245 marathon gang might want something lighter and punchier, but for most of us, I think these shoes are going to do what you need them to do. So should you buy the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 or the Speed 3? Well, I'd say you can buy either and not be disappointed, but this comes down to price rather than performance. Right now, if you can find a good deal on the Speed 3, I think you're going to get much the same ride overall, which makes it better value. So there you have it, that's been our head to the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 and the Speed 3. We hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, hit us up in the comments below. If you've had the chance to run in one or both of these shoes, let us know your thoughts. How did you find them? Don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the bell to find out when more great Run Testers videos land on the channel. If you want a full review of both of these shoes, I'm going to pop those videos up on the channel now. Otherwise, it's been a real pleasure talking to you about the shoes, and we hope to see you again soon on the Run Testers. Happy running, people.